It's my absolute pleasure to introduce our friend, and thank you for coming back once again, Henrik Jonsson.
Always a pleasure to be back here. Thank you. I believe this is my fourth time here, and they keep asking me to come back, so they are obviously crazy. But so here I'm going to round this up with a very cheerful subject, the games industry and its dirty secrets. To just get that. And so I'm just going to say briefly, I got the presentation real quick, but so I've been a programmer, a game scout, an executive producer, an advisor. I've done all kinds of things, even looking blurry on that photo there. I don't like it. But today what I want to do now is to give you some practical advice on what has changed over the last few years. Some of you may have noticed that something has shifted slightly in the games industry. And these dirty secrets I'm going to talk about, they're all about survival for indie developers. So this might not be as applicable to people who want to leave school and go like, yeah, I want to work for EA, I want to go work for Ubisoft, or big companies like Star Stable. But for people who want to run their own business, like Tiny Nomads, but they've already said all the good things. Anyway, so but these things are for you. It's interesting for everyone, hopefully, but indie developers have probably the most practical use of this stuff. So some of you started 3 years ago, some of you started 2 years ago, 1 year ago, I'm not really sure. It's a 3 years bachelor program here on the island. So 2022 was, yay, ever-rising tidal wave of joy. And oh my God, 3 years later, it's a tough one. It's been a bumpy ride, to say the least. And so we're all here right now. We want to talk about games. We want to talk about games as creations of passions, vision and love. We all want to make games. Ali talked about this, Tiny Nomads talked about this, the joy of creation, the joy of making something that connects with people. So we want to celebrate you and your games, your creativity here. However, dirty secret number one, no one wants to buy your game. I'm sorry. All right, so we're done? Yeah. Thank you. No, so this is basically exactly what you just said. This is not because your game is bad, but it is because they don't know that your game exists. So in 2025 and going forward, any game developer, and I mean literally anyone, including Sony releasing Concord, they need to build their audience while they're building their game. It's become the number one thing that matters in games these days. There has to be an audience for a game. There used to be an idea, if you just make a good game, people will notice it and they will buy it and you will be successful. I'm sorry, that ship has sailed just like the cruise ships in the harbor. Not here anymore. One reason is that games media has absolutely completely collapsed. There used to be these things printed on dead leaves or dead trees where people could write what games they were supposed to be buying next season. That's gone. Online publications are basically gone. Getting automatic recognition of your game, that option is really, really hard these days. It's tricky as all hell. The publishing industry has changed significantly. This is Jason De La Rocca. He's wearing fancier shirts than I am, but he gives some information here. This is very typical publisher numbers. They received, out of 1,000 first contacts they receive for project investment, they end up signing with 1.6. So I was with Amplify Game Invest for many years. We received, I've gone through about just over 1,000 types of pitches, and we've signed more than that, but not a lot. So the percentages here are definitely not on the side of the developers. It's a tough, tough business. And so let's keep repeating Jason's words here, but just because he's got such fancy shirts. As an indie studio, you're no longer just in the game making business, you are in the fan building business. basically what you just said. I like that you're still here, so you can say like, yeah, well, as you said, we can, yeah. You need to work on building your audience while making the game. Otherwise, no one wants to buy your game. Of course, it doesn't help that the rate of game releases double every 4 years, more or less. So in 2016, 4,300 games launched on Steam. 2022, 9.2 thousand, or 9,200, apparently that's how you say it. And in 2024, 18,887 games. That's according to SteamDB. Who knows? But, 19,000 games every year. On top of that, there's the everlasting host of games like Roblox and Game Pass on Xbox, Fortnite and mobile. You are competing with people's time and attention in ways that are super, super tricky. And this is something you have to work through in order to build your own game studio. And it is hard. It is tough. And just to be even more sad, and we can make everyone cry, we can realize that less than 5% of game releases sell more than 10,000 copies. Out of 19,000 games, this means that 900 games per year sell more than 10,000 copies released on Steam. And less than 2% sell more than 25,000 copies. That means that 350 games per year sell more than 25,000 copies. And the publisher will look at 25,000 copies and say, this is a disaster, we're shutting everything down, everyone has to go home. These are awful numbers. What is it they say in that Hunger Games? May the luck be ever in your favor? Well, it isn't. So it is harsh. It is hard. It's a tough environment out there. So no one wants to buy your game. Statistically, you have to roll pretty good because 99 games out of 100 fail to sustain even a tiny team. So that's okay. We'll make a good game that goes really well. I'm going to sell 1 million copies. But you need to build your audience while you're building your game. This is what basically this secret, the dirty secret of first dirty secret is all about. The second one is that even a huge success can fail to secure your studio. This is the flip side of this coin. Did you hear I said I'm going to sell 1 million copies of my game? What happens if I sell a lot of games? I'm going to be rich. So let me release my absolutely fake game, Glyro Glade. I'm going to sell it for 30 euros, and in 1 year I sell 1 million copies. Fucking fantastic, isn't it? I mean, it's huge and unlikely numbers, and it's all fake, but let's do the math. Let's see where this takes us. We sell a lot of copies. So, how much money did I make? Well, this is easy. 30 euros times 1 million copies means 30 million euros. I'm going to go home now. I like these numbers. They look nice. So, wait a minute. So, games cost different amounts of money around the globe. There's the Steam regional pricing scheme, which is very interesting to look at because it turns out if you sell all your games in Switzerland, they buy them for a lot more money. 36 euros instead of 30. On the other hand, if you sell them in North America, they're at 28, and in South America, 19. There's regional pricing. This affects your income. And usually it's less than your suggested retail price, your price point. So let's make an average. Let's cut it down a bit. Let's say 27 euros per copy. That's still good money. 27 million. Good. However, another dirty secret is that sales works really well. So when you have your game on sale, people sell it at a discounted price. That means you get less money, and they spend a lot of time. People spend a lot of time buying games on sales. So let's cut it down even further. 24 euros per game on average. And I believe that's a bit high. It's still 24 million copies. That's great. Oh no. 10% returned their game. So I sold 1 million copies, but 100,000 people returned their copy. They didn't want to play it. They got other stuff to do, places to be, things to see. So, okay, so we got instead of 30 million euros, we have 21.6 million euros. Still loads of money. The dirty secret number 3 is that you will get paid last. So, we all agree on the 21.6 million, even though it's not quite true, but it's going to be lower, but still, it's still there. So you sell it on Steam, you sell it on Xbox, you sell it on PlayStation. They take 30%, they manage the payment, scrape off 30%, and give you the money that's left. 16.8 million euros. It's still pretty good money. However, who receives the money from Steam? Well, it's the publisher. And this time, in the example of Control, that's 505 Games. That is not Remedy. 505 Games is a publisher. So, anyone who knows what a publisher is? Raise their hand if they believe you know what a publisher is. Vague idea-ish. Basically, a publisher is someone who buys the exclusive right to sell your game. This is what they do. They give you money, hopefully, and in turn they sell your game and receive the money. They provide marketing and other services usually, and if the publisher sells your game and then gives you a percentage of their income. They own the Steam page and the community. There's going to be a delay from when Steam pays them, when the publisher gets the money, and when the developer sees the money. We're going to talk about that later. And sometimes they also buy the IP of your game, so they own your universe that you have created. They also need to get paid. Sorry for this slide, but I'm just going to show that there's a lot of stuff. I'm not going to dig into the numbers. But they have expenses. So, let's see where the money goes. Follow the trail. Distributors takes a cut. The engine license and VAT, MOMS, gets cut off. The publisher has costs, marketing, porting, salaries for the dev team. So some of this money goes to the dev team because they have paid to you, basically, the dev team. So you get a little bit of that. Then publisher income that they want to use for their own salaries and more projects in the future. The actual developer income from the game is 3 million euros out of that. So this project cost basically 3 million euros to make. So they got the money funding from the publisher to make the game, and now the team has 3 million euros to push towards their next title. So they still come up on the top, they still have money, they still have extra money, but there's been a lot of money that they didn't get. Of course. As we said, Jason said earlier, you're not going to get funded by a publisher anyway, so a lot of this middle stuff doesn't really apply to you. But this is a little bit to show that even with a successful, highly successful game, or with 1 million games sold, you're not exactly rolling in money, even though I know 3 million euros look like, I mean, it's a lot of money. I mean, but for a studio with a couple of employees, it's not massive. So you're being paid last. That's the second dirty secret. So out of that massive sales, you got 3 million euros, which is great, but not super duper extra great. And this is probably enough for the developer to make their next game. It's awful, isn't it? Sucks to make a successful game. It's bad to do a poorly performing game, and it's bad to do a successful game. This means that you have more, for the next title, you have more independence. You have more money in the bank to put towards development. You're not as reliant on the publisher for funding. So your terms become better for your next game. It sounds terrible, but it's not really terrible. But it's harsh. The numbers are tough. I should have a sip of water. Remember I told you that there's a delay between Steam and the publisher and the developer when it comes to payment? Because let's look at the imaginary sales timeline for a game. Glyro Glade, the amazing game that I just created, sold 1 million copies of. It released here, month 0, sold massive amounts because we had great community, we had all done all that work. And so, I mean, we can see the sales curve going up here. But there's an income delay because Steam takes a while to pay out the money, and then the publisher takes a while to pay the money to me. So it can take to 5 to 6 months before the developer gets paid. And this, of course, is a terrible time. This is an awful time for the developer. There's no money coming in. You ship the game, and you're just waiting for the money to roll in. This is Death Valley. This is a terrible time for a studio. There might be layoffs, even though they released a successful game. They can't pay salaries. This is tough. This is very tough. However, when you're dealing with a publisher, you can avoid this by having DLC deals as well. This is why you frequently see at least one DLC coming out of a game, even though the game was not necessarily a success. Because the publisher has already paid for one DLC to be released, and the developer gets funding to make the DLC. So the actual studio survives this kind of death trap. But this is tough territory. So, yeah, but all this, it can't get worse, right? I'm sorry. So, dirty secret number 4 is that many studios fail long before they ship their game. They are unable to bring their game to market. Tiny Nomads, they are struggling. I mean, you're doing great, but no one's going to say that you're dancing on, the ceiling. You're doing extra work. You're doing work for hire, half-time. So before you ship your first game and get reliable income from yourself, this is basically a time of death. And when we see that Ubisoft or someone shuts down, or Embracer Group shuts down a bunch of studios, we all hear about it because it gets written up in news. But when small studios, independent studios with no funding decide to close the doors, there's no one even to write about that. That is not really interesting to Game Press today. Then again, Game Press is dead as well, so we're talking about LinkedIn posts and stuff. So when you start up a company, you want to say, where do we get our development budget from? And you just said that you can't wait for getting funding before you start developing. You have to start developing initially. But when you talk to a publisher or an investor, you will need to convince them that you and your project are the best option out of hundreds of other teams for them to stick their money into. And they want to see a great game with a great team with a great audience, because you can't live in a world. They don't want to invest in something that doesn't already have a significant audience, because they don't want to end up in the first dirty secret, nobody wants to buy your game. So, given that no publishers or no companies get signed by publishers, 1.6 out of 1,000, self-publishing is rapidly becoming the most realistic option. I'm really running out of throat ability here. So I would recommend any studio who's doing a little bit of work to start looking into releasing micro games. They're on UEFN, they are on Roblox, small web game sites like Pokey. Basically Pokey, and I'm just going to push it up here. Let's see if I can. It's a small site with just web games, like Flash games. And you just click and you start playing. If you're developing Godot or one of those smaller engines, you can get your game out on here and let's start playing this ridiculous racer game right on my phone. This is the way to get revenue while you're waiting for your proper game to reach maturity and get an audience. So there's ways to get those games out there very quickly, rapidly, and UEFN, you can make a game in 2 weeks and release it and actually get actual money back from for the Fortnite ecosystem. This builds a team. You learn how to work together. You learn how to go through ideation, design, implementation, and release of a game very, very quickly. This gets you experience in shipping, knowing how to design things. It gives you possibly an audience. If people find your game and then find your name, your cool Tiny Nomads, it's a fantastic game that sticks in my head. So if you release Tiny Nomads, I see a Tiny Nomad game on UFN, I see a Tiny Nomad game on Poki, and then I go like, oh, they're releasing on Steam as well. I'm going to buy it. I know that their game exists. So this is a great way to develop your team, develop your studio, build up your experience, build up your audience, and you get measurable data for your when you talk to publishers around your game. So yes, the fifth dirty secret is says, thankfully, there are ways to survive. So this might sound like some absolute ridiculous nonsense. But hey, I've seen so many cases where people are basically saying, well, adjust your team to suit their environment. Your environment has shifted. It's a cold front coming in. You can't be wearing beach wear and sunglasses when it's snowing outside. You have to adjust how you perceive and behave as a studio when the environment changes. Might not be, that was probably a terrible analogy, but we're close to the sea here, so that's popped into my head. Basically, the environment has shifted over the last 3-4 years, and we kind of have to learn to dance with that. So if your team can say, well, we do market evaluations, we look at what people like to play, we aim to produce things that please the players, we're building a community. And if you can say to a publisher that, hey, yeah, we believe we're going to take less than 18 months to finish this game that we're building, it means that you're doing rapid cycles, it means that you de-risk the game project, and your next game is going to come out faster. But if you can work faster, if you can evaluate new tools, plugins, for whatever engine you're using, so that you can get better faster, you shrink development time, you shrink the budget necessary, you increase the chance of a developer or a publisher to want to invest in you, or you get multiple releases out quicker so you can start earning some income into your studio. This is what the new environment kind of is screaming for now. You have to adapt, or learn how the environment works, at least, that then you can work whatever way you want, of course, but knowing of this is helpful, I believe. And if you can say, well, we have a long-term strategy for our studio, and be agreeing on that internally, so you don't end up fighting each other in a tight environment. That's a sure way to lose your studio, lose your passion. If you can't agree on what the type of games you want to make, it can be a good idea to split up, find other collaboration partners. Because if you don't agree on your strategy on how you want to work together, it's going to get tricky very fast. And we want to, if you can say to yourselves that we want to commit to success, we want to focus on our work to learn, adapt, and get faster. So you share, I saw this plugin, let's look at that. Let's look at how this terrain builder is working. Let's see how we can make levels faster. Let's see how we can make procedural levels, inventory systems, items, database, crafting. How can we make things faster so we can just make the game we want to make with the tools we can find? And also, of course, that we know our strengths. If you are very strongly programmer heavy, you should probably make a game that is not that reliant on art. Find an art style that doesn't require as much work. Maybe not, or vice versa. If you are not programmer heavy, maybe not do a multiplayer game or something that requires a lot of engineering. And this sounds ridiculous, but I've seen it so many times. People are overstretching, they're overscoping. There was a great picture of overscoping in the last talk. Just finding smaller team, or not a smaller team, but a smaller game that fits the studio very well. This will help you massively. And the third section of thirds here, we release often. We constantly probe the market with small games. So this is poker, this is UEFN, this is Roblox games. Getting games out there to understand what players do enjoy, at least that gives you some sort of understanding of what you can get. It also gives you passive income once you're shipped those games because you don't need to update them. And this means that you're able to prove to investors and publishers that the team can deliver. You can say, we have shipped 10 games. That's a lot better than saying, oh, we've known each other for 10 years. And I promise we can ship a game. Have you shipped anything? No. That's not what they want to hear. And you can become partially self-funded by micro games, getting those games, the Pokey and the UFN titles out there. That means that you become a safer bet for a publisher who wants to invest in games. So, and the dirty secret is that every single time I try to give advice around what works in the games industry, someone will say, well, Balatro did that, or Stardew Valley did that. I'm like, oh my God, yes, of course, but they are 1 in 100. They rolled double zeros on the dice earlier. They're great games. They were developed over a long time. I don't think that's the kind of life people want to have while they're developing games. So there are always exceptions, and you can always be one of the exceptions, but you shouldn't rely on being one of the 1 in 100 type of game outcomes. I have no track of time. I've completely lost, but it's half an hour, and I think that's quite enough. Oh no. Yeah, so let's go into questions. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a mic coming. I could have talked for 15 more minutes, and I'm giving the microphone time to charge. I cut so many slides at this deck. You have no idea. There.
First of all, thank you so much. That was actually a masterclass in huge value, and now I understand the DLC. To be honest, I've been in the industry for many years. I didn't know that was one of the reasons. So for smaller studios, it's always an option like, should we go VC? Should we go incubators? Should we go crowdfunding? Should we do angel investors? Do you have, I know it could be a long answer, but do you have guidance or like on a high level how to tell which direction you should go, pros and cons, or some recommendation if there's any? Thank you.
So there's when it comes to investors that are not investing in projects but in your company, and you mentioned angel investors and VCs, they are very different. They have different approaches. So the angel investor is basically someone who has made a bit of money on playing football or doing some other kind of activity, and they say, oh, games sound like nice. My grandson plays games, so my granddaughter wants to play Star Stable a lot, so I invest in this company. They bring a small bag of money and put it on the table and give you that's the angel investor. They come in early and give you a little bit of a push up from the ditch onto the road kind of thing. The VCs are people who invest in hundreds of companies at the same time. VC stands for venture capital, and it's something that is born out of the Silicon Valley horror show that is ultra mega capitalism in the worst way. What they will do is say, well, we're going to invest in 100 companies, and we are going to put a small slice into each of these companies. We have, let's say, we have $100 million in a fund. We're going to invest in 100 companies, and we're going to bet that every single one of those companies can return the entire fund, which means at least 100 times return on investment. So VCs today, they are not looking for, oh, that's a cute game about ghosts and eating chocolate. They are looking at games that will create a new hobby for people. World of Warcraft is a new hobby. Minecraft is a new hobby. It's a lifestyle changing game. People meet in Minecraft and do whatever. Star Stable Online is a hobby changing game. So VCs are looking for that type of long running game that will engage people over a very long time, because those are the only games that can return 100x reliably if they're good. There's always going to be the Valheim, the Balatros, the Stardew Valleys, the small games that return a lot of value. But one example is, let's use Valheim as an example. They released and became a massive hit, and I don't know, 10, 12 million copies of the game sold, something. They have released a couple of updates, nothing really big, and so the game is currently dead. There's very few people who are playing Valheim currently. Compared to a game like Stardew Valley, that has continuous updates. It comes out on new platforms. It has additions and stuff. So that has become a lifestyle game rather than Valheim, who's a one-off. So that's the VCs are not even looking at Valheim today style games. They are looking for games that can completely transcend the entire industry and create a new hobby. So unless you are making a game that's going to create a new hobby for people, VCs are not your people. I used to work with Amplify Game Invest, which started off as Goodbye Kansas Game Invest. So this is a long answer. Sorry, everyone. Dinner's cancelled. We started off with Goodbye Kansas Game Invest. We were doing small minority investments. We were doing directed 20 to 30% investments in game studios. Our goal there was to make sure that we helped the studios enough so that our piece of the pie became a lot more valuable. 3, 4, 5 times more valuable, not 100 times more valuable. And we were going to do that more reliably by being competent in game development, competent in the games market. So we invested in a couple of games. The Ascent is one of ours. Lightyear Frontier is one of ours. Cavalry, the main competitor to Star Stable. Equestrian is the name of that game. A couple of studios that did fairly well, and a couple that didn't. That's the name of the game. But we had a fairly decent hit rate on companies. Then we moved over to Embracer Group, and the rules changed, so we had to acquire the entire company. So, which means it's a different type of that's what's called merger and acquisitions, M&A. It's a different type of investment. You buy the entire company. So there's a lot of, and when it comes to finding, nobody does that for small studios, really, these days, because that model has kind of been shut down now. Very few, some people will still be doing partial investment, minority investments, and they are called things like, what's the KM's company?
Syndicate?
Brave, kind of Brave and Behold Ventures, yeah. Behold Ventures is the one I wasn't looking for. So they are doing those kind of small investments in studios, buying small tranches. They can work very well. That can be a really good match for a small indie company. But you still need to be able to show that we are on a path. If you give us 3 million to develop our game or 5 million to develop our game, we will be able to give you 15 down the line, 20, because our game is just that good. And of course, they are getting tons and tons of applications for funding, so you need to be able to beat all those competitors as well. Did we miss any angel investor, VC? Publisher. Yeah, so publisher was basically the thing I was talking about most of the time here. They do project investment, so they invest in your project and not inside your company. They still give you money, but they don't take part ownership of your studio forever. That's the main difference. There are a couple of others as well who do pure project investments. Agora, gaming partner, do investments, for example, in just projects without taking ownership. But they are not a publisher. Okay, I think that covers most of the practical ones. Yes, okay. Anyone awake for another question? Anything else?
I have one.
Oh,
Let me get the mic to you.
yeah.
Thank you. With your history in the game industry, do you feel that there are still some like oddities that you wouldn't really see elsewhere in other businesses, both for the better and for the worse of the game industry?
The oddities?
Oddities like odd business practices or something similar.
Well, I have had the good fortune of not having to be in any other types of businesses, but I mean, there are. Of course, there's a lot of weird stuff going on everywhere, but I think that the oddest thing I've seen in games is really people who are kind of refusing to look at the market and we just want to make games. We hear that a lot, right? And that's fine if you're doing a hobby, if you're making game as a hobby, and you go work at a bank or a wherever, insurance company, or if you're a programmer somewhere else, right? During the daytime. And if you just want to make games as a hobby, that's perfectly legitimate. But it's very difficult to go from that take that mindset and move that into a business. This is what I want to do, start a company around. That's super tricky. And that's something that I've never really fully understand, and still there's always the one exception, the 1 in 100 that succeeds by doing exactly that.
Yeah.
So I mean, Stardew Valley is probably one of those, like just sitting in the basement and working for 7 years, and then.
Thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't want to call people who make Stardew Valley odd, but the mindset is a little bit odd to me, and I rarely see that in other type of studios or other type of businesses.
First of all, thank you for a great talk. Super interesting, I think, for all of us here in Tiny Nomads to listen in on it. My question is a bit tricky, so I'm not really asking for an accurate answer, more your opinion.
I'll make something up.
Awesome. My thought, there's recently a lot of discussions about price hikes in AAA games. I'm thinking Nintendo games costing, is it $80, $90? And also talks about GTA 6 costing around $100, kind of setting the bar for other companies to, basically price games at way higher than what we're used to. So my question is, players looking for cheaper alternatives, I have this speculation that they could kind of pivot into indie games, assuming we kind of stay at the same pricing. So what are your thoughts on how do you think it will impact the indie scene, if you have any opinions on that?
You mean if the normal price for a AAA game becomes $100, for example?
Sure,
or, Well, I mean, to be fair, games have been costing $60 for 2 decades, and the sticker price has remained the same numbers for over 2 decades on AAA games. It's kind of astonishing in itself. If you look at what a car costs 25 years ago, the difference is massive, right? The numbers on the number, like whatever value for money you get, that's different. That's the different thing. But like the sticker price, the actual numbers, is very. So it's not adjusted to the purchasing index or whatever it's called for the consumer price index. But with that said, I mean, of course, $100 is a massive amount of money for buying a game, and I can say that you get a lot of money a lot of value for playing GTA 6 for 5,000 hours for that kind of money. But still, it's a big number. So there's definitely an area for indie games to go in and exist, to make a living in that space. And I also believe that their indie games. There's going to be like double indie. I don't know whatever ridiculous notations we want. A double I don't know, like slightly bigger indie games that cover more ground than the kind of smaller indie games usually do. But it's definitely a case of the size of the game becoming more stratas for more layers of that kind of the game size. That's going to be. I definitely believe there's going to be more of those layers in that cake, especially since the market also goes the other way with pokey games being like down here. You just push buttons, 1 or 2 mechanics, and that's all you need for 5 minutes of gameplay. That's fun enough for distraction. So we're going in both directions. Indie games are getting bigger. Indie games are also getting smaller because of UEFN, Roblox, and these kind of micro games, whatever you want to call them. So I believe there's going to be a lot of space for indie developers over the years, finding who are brave enough to embrace the full spectrum of what's available, making small games and one big game. If you make 5 small games while you're making a big game, and with big I mean normal-sized indie game, right? But if an indie game takes 2.5 years to make, you can also make 10 smaller games during that period, just to give a smaller amount of revenue. Many companies do work for hire in order to get kind of that type of revenue instead, like you mentioned, working half-time and at a proper job. No offense. But there's another way to do that, and also releasing these kind of smaller games to get passive income from the games that you've already shipped, feeding into your development path. There's a lot of options now, which I think is pretty great. But that doesn't really pull away from the fact that it's really hard to be an indie developer currently. It is tricky, for sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone in this section here?
Okay. Can I have one? I'm thinking about UCG, user-generated content, and games like Poki and so on, or platforms like Poki where you put your games. How about the cuts on these platforms when it comes to revenue?
Well, I mean, usually, I don't remember really how it works. Roblox is strange because the developers get paid in Robux, which is that you have to go through a special exchequer to kind of extract from the system. It's a strange setup. It might be super cool. We have a Swedish company called the Gang.
The Gang.
Yeah, they've done that and they've been successful on Roblox. Of course, there's there's a company called Welcome to Roblox, or Bloxburg maybe, who made millions and millions of Roblox. So I mean, it's definitely, that's a one-person show, one-person guy in Sandviken who made hundreds of millions of Roblox. So it's definitely possible. It's just the cuts are different. They are higher. Like you get a smaller cut, but then again, your development costs tend to be very low when it comes to the actual game input you put in. I think that Poki has fairly decent levels, especially if you can show that somehow that you're bringing the traffic in. If you use your channels to get people to the Poki platform and play the game, I think you can get a higher revenue cut for the ads they serve up. I'm not fully sure how that, I never released on their platforms, I don't fully know. But it's definitely an option for decent income, not massive, but a trickle that can add up over time.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because recently, I mean, you talked a bit about this, but the fact that not only to generate revenue on the side, but also to generate traction for your other projects through these side micro games.
Yep.
It's something that recently we've been seeing a lot and looking into because it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think especially in games that have a very recognizable main character.
Yeah.
If you know of any such games where you recognize the main character anywhere, you might be onto something, right? Using that nose, whatever nosy is called. But that having a unique art style will definitely play to your strengths in those scenarios as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, everyone wants to go and, I don't know, do whatever you want. Free play, go have fun. Thank you so much for sitting down and listening.